Okay, and welcome to yet another DNN Community Hangout. Welcome, Will. It seems like we were just here.
Deja vu, deja vu. It's like I saw you just yesterday.
Yeah, no kidding. Although we're missing a guest this time, so I
Well,
guess you heard
I
the
don't know.
news yesterday.
I heard the news yesterday, but after having Clint on for a full hour, I'm not sure we're exactly missing having a guest.
Yeah, Clint takes a while to get over, so
Actually, we tried to get a guest, in all honesty, and everybody said I'm not going to follow up on after Clint, and so we just couldn't get somebody for today.
So anyway, today we're going to talk a little bit about building modules using the new DNN8 SPA module framework. And we'll talk about what that is, and we'll work through a demo of that. And Will's going to keep me honest here and ask questions as we go along. But we're mostly going to be diving into code today. So I know this is targeted at our developer community, and really is one of the first bits of training we're going to be providing for the DNN8 module challenge. Anyway, let's get started, Will.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this because with the last CTP, I tried to do a module on my own following the dynamic content creator, and I ran into some challenges I talked to you about, and so I know those challenges are kind of solved, so everybody can participate now, and so I'm excited to see how that all worked out.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and take a look then. So let me share my screen, and we'll get a little bit of a parallax thing going here for a second, and let's go ahead and just drop in. Okay, so
it almost looked like we dropped in.
Yeah, good. So we're gonna, if I can get my machine to. So what we want to look at is the SPA module type today, and next week we'll do one on the MVC module type. But the first thing that I want to sort of cover is, why did we do SPA module type in DNN? Like, what was the problem we were trying to solve? And the thing that I noticed is, over the past year or 2 years, as we started looking at how we improve the story for developers in DNN8, is that building SPA modules, and I've been doing this for 5 or 6 years now, building SPA modules with DNN was a little bit of a challenge before. You had to figure out how to inject the framework into the system. You had to figure out how to get around the requirement to have ASCXs on the page, or even I saw like Peter Donker at the DNN Connect this spring had actually figured out how to host a CS HTML Razor file and use that to bootstrap his SPA module development. Regardless, it seemed like there was a lot of ceremony just getting started before you could even actually do any of the development itself, right? So you were building all of this framework integration pieces that would be better served by having that in the core platform. The other thing was is we wanted to make sure that whatever we built, that SPA modules were a first-class citizen, that if you were going to build something as a SPA, that you wanted first-class access to core platform, core framework items. You wanted to be able to integrate in a way that seemed native to DNN rather than something that was bolted on or something that was sort of an afterthought or sort of a side project. And so these were really the core fundamentals of why the SPA module type came about and sort of what our goals were with the SPA module type. When we look at what it is, it's really, how do I use HTML, JavaScript, and CSS to create a DNN module? I don't want to have ASCX web forms controls. I don't want to have CSHTML, whether it's a Razor script or whether it's a MVC view. I really don't want to have these heavy server-side components. I just want to do everything with HTML and CSS and some JavaScript to hook up my UI to a back-end service. And the back-end service might be hosted in DNN, or it might be hosted somewhere else. It doesn't necessarily have to be a back-end that is purely DNN, right? You could host HTML and JavaScript and maybe have the back-end be some common service that's up in the cloud. Maybe it's you're doing something with Google Analytics, or maybe you're doing something with some other cloud service. But at the end of the day, wherever that back-end endpoint is, HTML and JavaScript should be enough for building that. And really, it was built with the idea that HTML, JavaScript, and CSS are really the heart and soul of any SPA application. Where the back-end data lives is sort of immaterial to the SPA app itself.
So Joe, maybe we should step back here a little bit. You know, I think we're kind of coming at this from, hey, you already know module development, so you should, you know. So I think we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. For the uninitiated, or the designers, or you know, some of the people that may not be as familiar, like what is SPA? Like, what is that?
Yeah, so a SPA module is effectively the same pattern that Gmail and Outlook.com and many other online applications use, where you're not constantly making full page postbacks from the browser back to the server, getting the full page HTML and then re-rendering it in the browser. Every time you have to repaint the entire screen in the browser, there's a lot of back and forth to the server. There's a lot of time spent rendering in the page. And with SPA modules, you really want to do everything sort of in the browser as much as possible. And you want to go back and forth to the server just when you need additional data, or maybe when you need a small bit of layout code, so a little bit of HTML, right? So it might be, so in this image here of the dynamic content type manager, now you might say, okay, well, I want to go back. I don't care about rendering the tabs like for data types and templates here. I'm just on the content types page. So when I go to those other tabs, I might go to the server and get the HTML to render those things and render them on the fly. The rest of the page would stay static. I wouldn't touch the rest of the HTML. So your headers, your footers, your menus, all that stuff, I don't have to reload it, which means my page renders faster because I'm only changing part of the page, right? And so SPA is really about being very client focused in your development approach, being very browser focused in your development approach, and using the server like we would traditionally use the database. That's where I get my data from, and that's all. I don't really run business logic there, or if I do, it's mainly just validations of data and things like that. So that's what a SPA app is, and the SPA module is really about enabling those scenarios and to do it better and cleaner than traditionally you might have been able to do it in DNN. The other thing is, you don't have to go full SPA approach, right? You can still use HTML, JavaScript, and a web service backend and build more traditional DNN modules. And in fact, we've built a lot of tooling in the SPA module type to allow you to do just that. So if you want to leverage the module action menu, you can. If you want to leverage settings, you can. If you want to leverage localization framework, you can, right? And it's about, how do I enable all of those in a manner that makes sense in the SPA world, in the JavaScript and HTML world, but that's also going to make sense to DNN developers, right? Because we want to sort of meet in the middle between general web developers and DNN developers. I want it to be something where DNN developers could pick it up very quickly. I also want it to be something where general web developers could pick it up very quickly. It doesn't mean that I have to do everything that a normal web developer would do or do it exactly the same way, but the concepts shouldn't be completely foreign to anybody. Okay?
Yep.
So
One way to summarize that, Joe, is I just got a quote of I have our speaker from yesterday on IM right now, and he basically sums this up as, if you know JavaScript, you can build a module.
yes, absolutely. You might need a little HTML and CSS thrown in, but generally speaking, yeah.
If you know JavaScript and you don't know HTML, we got another problem.
Exactly. You're going to have a hard time building web apps if you don't know HTML,
Yeah.
regardless of the framework. So one of the big things that I talked about before was integration with DNN. And the SPA module type, we actually do that in two ways. One is through use of tokens. We've actually created some new custom tokens. And before we ship, we may even add some additional ones as we find out other areas that we want to integrate. And we'll take a look at what those look like. And then also through traditional web services. We've actually upgraded in DNN8 the web service framework to use Web API 2.0. Previous to like a 7.4.2 and back, we were using Web API 1, which is getting a little dated. With Web Service or Web API 2.0, we get a lot of new great capability, including some improved performance. So that's always good. One thing to keep in mind, though, SPA module types, or what we call a SPA module framework in DNN, is not a single page application framework. In other words, we don't do all of the things that Angular does or React does or Knockout. We're not trying to duplicate those frameworks. What we're trying to accomplish is to make it possible and easy, if you want to use those frameworks, to actually incorporate them and build a module sort of in the Angular way or the React way or the Knockout way. So it's about tearing down some barriers. It's not about building up a whole new type of way to build SPA modules. Having said that, we know that there's still going to be some friction around some of these SPA frameworks, and part of the DNN8 module challenge is to help identify some of those points of friction, so that maybe we can make some enhancements prior to us launching DNN8 to make it even easier. So if you load up the standard DNN8 nightly build, or you look at the CTP6 that we just released yesterday, you'll see one of the modules that we have in there is called the Dynamic Content Type Manager, which is part of the new Dynamic Content Creator framework that we have. And this whole module is built using the SPA module type. And we use Knockout in DNN anytime we're dealing with JavaScript heavy UI stuff, and we use it just for data binding. We do our own navigation, and we do our own other bits for required loading of JavaScript and things like that. That doesn't mean you have to use Knockout or you have to follow our exact pattern. This is really about how do I package my module, and we'll look at that here in a second. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at how we code or how we build the SPA module. And so in order to do that, a couple of things. So if you haven't looked already, I urge you to go to dnnsoftware.com/community/DNN8 contest, and this will show you all of the details contest that we're talking about today. Okay. So before we get started, you'll want to download and install a copy of CTP6. Everything I'm going to do today is based off of CTP6. So again, just go to dnnnews.codeflex.com. We released CTP6 yesterday, so everything should be good there. And I've already got, I just installed this brand new CTP here on my
right, Joe, for everybody watching, if you haven't watched this before, just know that, you know, all the links and resources that we're talking about here, we'll have a follow-up blog that's going to be posted pretty much everywhere, and it'll include links, direct links to these things in the show notes. So just in case you're having trouble finding some of these things, you'll be able to click right through on the blog.
Yeah. So, and the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to open up Visual Studio. Sorry, I thought I'd closed this already. We're going to close this solution. create a new one from scratch. So the first thing, if you haven't done it already in Visual Studio, is you'll want to go into the tools and go into extensions and updates. And from here, you can go in and look for the .NET Nuke project templates. Now, I already have these installed. If they're not installed, you'll find them in the Visual Studio gallery. Just look for .NET Nuke, and you'll find the project templates by Chris Hammond. He just updated them earlier this month. We're actually working on some new templates that'll make this even easier. But today I'm going to show you how to do this from scratch, just using Chris's existing templates. It's really not that hard. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So I'm going to build a new project, and we're going to go ahead and open that up. We'll get a dialog. Great. Yeah, I just reinstalled Visual Studio, so I apologize if there are a couple of things here that's got to initialize first. Thought I got all those out of the way, but that's okay. And so we've got this .NET Nuke folder here under Visual C, or Visual C Sharp. And so I'm going to go to this .NET Nuke 7, which is actually also can be used in .NET Nuke 8. Don't freak out. Just because it says 7, it's still compatible. So the DNN 7 DAL2 compile module, and I'm just going to create this. So if you follow Chris's instructions, and when you get the stuff, you may have to go to Chris's website and follow his instructions a little bit. So I'm going to actually browse to where I have that DNN website installed at. And so let me see on my machine. I want to go to websites. I want to go into my test area, and I've got a SPA demo. So this is where I want to. So I want to install it in this website, and the way Chris does it is Chris wants you to open up and go and install this inside the desktop modules area. So we're going to create a new one inside that location. So that'll give me where it's going to be installed, and I'm going to call this my SPA demo app, and that's fine. We don't need to worry about creating the Git repository for now. And we definitely don't want this directory for a solution. We just want to leave it just like this. We'll go ahead and hit OK. And that's going to create a module for me. And Chris will have a bunch of other instructions in there on some other stuff we can do once this is done. And this will take 30 seconds or a minute to go ahead and spin up. And it's actually generating all of the bits of the project for me. And Chris has some really nice instructions on what to do next. So Chris says, you know, we need this to point to dnndev.me. So I'm going to go ahead and open up IIS Express or IIS Studio here.
A little side note with dnndev.me, you might be thinking, if you're watching this video and you've never used this domain, oh, how am I going to point it to that, and why am I pointing it to that, and what am I going to do to make that work? You honestly don't have to make anything work, because some generous person in the community, and I don't know who that is, maybe you do, Joe, but yeah, somebody pointed that at 127.0.0.1, so it's going to just work.
Yeah, so Ian Robinson set that up several years ago.
Nice.
I had posted. There's also one lvh.com or lvh.me, something like that, which stands for local virtual host, which is where I first found out about it, and then after I blogged about it, Ian went ahead and set that up. So I already had dnndev.me set up on another binding, but so I just had to turn that one off. We'll reset it here on this one on port 80. So now I've got.
Watch or that do any module development, if you ever meet Ian Robinson at any of our events, be sure to buy him a beer. I know I'm going to now that I know it was him.
So now I've got dnndev.me is set up, which I needed. We're not going to change the target framework for the project at the moment. We'll leave it the way it is. It's fine. We might want to look at the project, how it started. I don't really care about that for now, because I'm not actually going to start it from this project, so I'm just going to leave that alone for now. And then Chris has got some other stuff, nothing that I'm too worried about at the moment. So I'm going to close all of that. All of this is fine. It's just other junk that pops up. And so now I've got a module here. So I'm going to go ahead and build this module just so we've got compiled. And notice that this module is using ASCX's, very traditional DNN module. We're going to open up this this page here because I'm going to want to change some things in here in a minute before we build. So my build, there we go. Why am I not seeing? Oh, references. Let's make sure all of these are fine. No, where am I seeing a reference issue? Oh, you know what? I probably did. I don't want to copy local. I'm going to turn off all these copy locals because I don't really want to. I really want it to just use my local system. I don't want it to be copying anything into my bin folder here. So we'll just make sure all of those are turned off. And then I'm still getting some reference errors. Oh yeah, I do need to. Sorry, there was one change here we need to make. So DNN 8 is actually a DNN or a .NET 4.5.1 project. We can build against 4.5 and we'll be okay. I'm just gonna reset that to 4.5.1, and that should resolve those issues. And you could see that in the error message if I just read the error message a little better. So we'll go ahead and save that. And now let's try building again and making sure everything builds okay. And all I'm trying to do is just get a basic module out there, and then we're going to start hacking on this module. So Chris has got all of the framework pieces, or all the pieces that I need sort of set there for what a standard module looks like. So with that, let's go back to our website and see. I don't want that one.
And Joe, just so everybody knows, I know you kind of mentioned it in passing earlier, but the things that you're doing today isn't necessarily the things that people need to do tomorrow, right? We have a little bit of help coming.
Yeah. So once we build out the new templates, which I expect should be out next week, I've got the SPA one probably 99% done. I've still got to send the code over to Chris to incorporate in the templates, and you'll be able to. You'll still use Chris's templates, but we'll have a SPA specific template. We'll also have an MVC specific template. All of those things will be done for you. So a lot of the start from a different module type and convert it over to SPA, all of that will be done for you. But for now, sometimes I like to make sure that people know what's going on under the covers, so they know that there's no real magic that the template is doing for you, right? Sometimes you need to know, like, if I have an existing module, how would I convert it? And this is basically going to show us that, assuming I can get my website to start responding to me here. So all we're going to do here, this first step is really about going into the extensions, and we're going to install that new SPA demo module that we just compiled, and we're actually, looks like.
And if this is your first time doing this, folks, basically what the reason we're doing that is we introduced some code, but we're working within a framework, and the framework doesn't yet know what to do with that code that we put in there, and so Joe's about to tell it.
Right. Yeah. So if you look in here and you look down through the modules, obviously there's no SPA demo module. I haven't installed it. I've written some code, it's in a folder, but I really need to tell the system, hey, there's a module here. So in development, this is quite common. I'll develop the module, and then I'll have to tell the system, hey, let's go run this module, or let's go do something with this module. So
and Joe, you should be aware. You might want to slow down a little bit because your internet connection. We're getting some feedback that the sound isn't great, and the screen updating is a little blurry. So you might want to slow down a bit.
Okay.
Oh, and now I hear you clearly.
Yeah, so it should be coming in and out. I think some of it may have been those extra browser tabs I had open were chewing some memory and maybe impacting some things, but I can see my CPU, and we're looking pretty good on the CPU side, but clearly I've got some other issues that's slowing things down at the moment. But hopefully it shouldn't be too much of a problem here. And if it is, we'll skip some of this. So here I'm going to pull from a manifest. So since I know I have my module, and if we look at the module itself, you can see I've already got a manifest that Chris generates for us as part of the demo. And the other thing I want to pull here is where is my providers and my data provider, my SQL data provider. I'm going to need this here in just a minute as well. So I'm going to pull all of this. I'm just going to copy that for now. So this says, where's the manifest at? I don't have an owner folder. I put it directly under the root. So we're going to come down here to our spa demo. And then it's going to pick up that there's a manifest in there. I'm going to let it go ahead and add a test page for me. I'm going to say go ahead and create that module. And this now is basically doing all of the registration of what's in my basic module. Now, it won't be able to show me anything just yet. There's actually going to be an error or something if I try to do anything because I don't have the database side of this. So I've got to go back into the host settings and come over here to the SQL tab. And if you remember, I did go and grab that SQL script from earlier. I'm just going to paste that in here. So this is basically just setting up the spa demo. It's called an items table that Chris has in his sample. And then I'll just go ahead and run that script. And the thing to note because we're using the DAL2, we don't have to do a bunch of stored procedures and things here. We just need to basically get the table where we're going to store our data. So that's a nice little benefit of using that framework. There are times when stored procedures are good, but most of the time you can rely on the DAL2 to deal with the database interactions for it. So now I can come in here.
Well, real quick, Joe, just to kind of give some background to some folks here. There's some things that we're glossing over here, and that's fine. We won't be able to show you like every little thing in this time period. So there's things like the manifest file. There's things like, we're mentioning DAL2, so there's clearly a DAL1 or something out there. Those are things that you can definitely find more information on the website and get some help on. And I'll try to do my best to add some show notes so you'll have some direct references to those if you're not familiar with those concepts.
Wow, I'm actually getting a little bit of a odd behavior here now, Will. Keeps wanting to open up new pages for me. So I don't know if I'm in, oh, I know what it is. My mouse is about out of power. So we will go to our touchpad. So let's go back over here to the page. Yeah. When my mouse starts running low on power, it starts behaving really weird. So we'll leave the mouse aside here for a second, plug him in and let him get charged up even while our page is going. Okay, so we have our page, we have our module on the page. So let's go ahead and just add a quick item on the page just so we can see some data. I want to just get some real simple data into the page.
You're gonna have to add a user first. His default.
Nope,
yeah.
You're right. I forgot about that. Otherwise,
role rather, I think, or no, user. I'm right. Sorry.
Yeah, it's got to be a role, user.
Yeah. I'm not trying to confuse you. I promise.
No, I know. I didn't have to set this up. Like I created the user on my other system where I've been doing my development of the spa module template. So it's been a few weeks since I had to do that. So.
I do the same thing though. Every time I first come and use the ChrisDoc template when I'm showing somebody, I go in there and try to create an item. I'm like, oh yeah, I have to do this first.
Yeah, because otherwise you'll get an error. So yeah, the thing to remember about Chris Hammond's templates they're a place to start from, and they show you a lot of examples, but they're not super robust, right? It's not a production module, right? It is, here's some sample code that walks you through most of what you need. And that should be enough to get you started. And I don't even need to worry about what the password is, because I don't want you guys to see what my password is.
You use all asterisks too? I do too.
I do. I usually use like 10 or 12 of them. And it's hard to remember exactly how many asterisks I used. So anyway, we'll come back in here. We'll go ahead and edit the page again. And let's go ahead and add that item now. So we'll add an item. I may add a couple here, but we'll just go item number 1. As you can see, I've done this a few times. And we'll assign it to myself since I'm the only user in the system. And it displays, you know, this silly little list. And we'll go ahead and yeah, well, the thing is, if you actually look in the module, there's no CSS, so it's really just an unstyled, unordered list, right? So
that's been convenient for me in the past. So, you know, doing some training sessions, because that gives me an opportunity to show people how to do CSS. But yeah, I get it.
So that's fine. So now we have a module. It's working. We can add some stuff in there. And now I have this module that does a little something. It builds this list, right? I can edit the items, I can delete them, and I'll leave it. Hopefully you can trust me that those will work, right? I haven't done anything yet. I haven't written any code of my own yet. So let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing to note, and I want you to pay close attention to this as I do this, because as we go along, we're going to end up in this really funky place where I'm part HTML or part SPA module and part traditional web forms module. So let's go ahead and add. Wow, thank you, Microsoft. Good thing not just my code causes problems occasionally. Let's see if Visual Studio is going to recover. Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's what we want. No demo is complete until the demo bugs start showing up. So good to know we're in good hands.
But it just means it's a normal day, Joe.
Yes, yes. So and I run as administrator. If you're doing anything with IIS and Visual Studio, you probably already run as administrator, so none of this should be a surprise. So we'll go ahead and open that back up. And then since it blew up before I actually saved my project, we will see where we're at here as soon as this opens up. Hello, Earth to, here we come. And we're in as administrator, and let's see what comes up here, if it's going to be in the list. And no, it is not. That's okay. We know where it's saved at, so we always get back to it. So come down here into my libraries, come into websites, test, down here to the SPA demo, and go into our desktop modules and find that module again. There we go. And then we should see a solution package in here, and we do. There it is, and just open that back up. So doesn't happen very often, but like I said, I just installed Visual Studio today again, so I'm not sure if some other thing was happening. And Cortana, you need to stop listening to me. And so we'll wait for that to open back up. Kill this one. Okay, so this is opening back up. It'll take a second here, but effectively what we're going to do is we're going to add an HTML page to this module, and I'm just going to name the HTML pages for now, basically the same as what my ASCXs are. Typically think of these as views, if you will, in a traditional model view controller, or think of them as views in a traditional SPA module, which is uses typically model view controller framework in JavaScript and JavaScript and HTML. So I'm just going to call this view.
Is what you're about to do, if they've already done any SPA module or SPA development elsewhere, especially on like a static HTML page or something, these concepts should be familiar, right?
Yeah. So, and I'm going to just delete all of the extraneous stuff here, because I really want to just do, we're going to just do a simple div and, you know, hello DNN world. So now I've got this view, it's called view.html, and I'm just doing that for simplicity's sake. My original view was called view.ascx. Now I'm going to do something. So what we want to do is we want to change where DNN looks for what's called a module control. So if you look in the manifest, you'll see we've got these module controls that are defined in the manifest. And the first one is this view control. It's called desktop module SPA demo view.ascx. What I really want here is I really want this to be view.html. And so if I were packaging the module, I could just package this up now, and it would know to grab the HTML file instead of the ASCX. Because we're in a development environment, I need to go and tell the framework, just like I had to pass the framework that manifest. And now, since the module is already installed, I can just go in here and edit this, and we'll edit this. And once we edit that, right, I need to come down here to the module definitions, look at the module control. So this very first one here, this view.ascx, we're going to go ahead and edit that. And what I want is to say, instead of this view ASCX, give me this view.html, right? So now I've got a different source there, and we'll go ahead and update that. And now the framework, now DNN knows about it. You know, it's not enough for me and my project to just change something in the manifest. I still have to tell DNN that I want this other thing to be my view, right? So now at this point, DNN knows about it. I can go ahead and already saved it, I think. Hello. So we'll go ahead and close that down, and we'll go back to our test page here. Give it a second, go back to our test page. And now it's rendering my HTML view. Now that's great. You know, now I've got this HTML here. It's being rendered, and I can see that it's being rendered. Interestingly, if I go back into my edit mode here, even though, now notice I don't have a module action menu here anymore. My module action menu is actually missing. And the reason for that is, if you think about module actions in a DNN module are defined on the view, right? They're defined on that ASCX. So that ASCX is here, right? It says module actions. Here's my module action. Everything I want to do with that. So, okay, so we'll come back to that in a minute. Let's go ahead and get some data coming into this particular thing. So I'm going to build out a couple of areas here. So I'm going to build out I'm going to create a new folder. We'll add a new folder. There we go. I'm going to add one called services. I'm going to put all my web service stuff in there, and I'm going to add another one. I'm just going to call that, we'll call that scripts. That's where we're going to put all of our scripts. And so the first thing I want to do, I want to create a new JavaScript. Now I'm going to do this using Knockout, and I'm not going to build the whole thing. I'm not just going to copy paste all of the code from another one. I'll show you the steps. We may not get to a full working one today, but that's fine. So I'm going to just call it an item view model. Or yeah, let me see if that's what I want here. Give me a second. I'm just looking on my other page here, so I'm going to call that the item view .js, and we'll go ahead and hit OK. And then that's going to give me a bit of JavaScript here, which is blank, and I'm going to say DNN. We'll just call this spa demo. How about that? Spa demo equals spa demo or new object. So this is just basically going to find out if I already have something called spa demo, then I don't need to recreate it. I can just grab it. If I don't have one, then I need to create a new object, and that's going to be the object that I start hanging other information off of, right? And then, so then what I want to do is I want to come over here and I'm going to create a couple of models here. So I'm going to create a spa demo item list view model equals function open close, bracket it so that I make sure everything is always closed. And I want to, when I'm creating a list, I want to know maybe what module ID I'm related to. I also might want to pass in some localization values. So these are just some things that I'm doing. Again, at this point, this is you have control now, right? So whatever SPA framework that you're using, you'll plug that in here for your JavaScript. But I'm just going to pull a few things here. And so, oops, let me get my mouse, make sure I know where my mouse is at. So before I go further here, let's see if I've got my mouse back. Okay, where is my mouse? Right there. So before I go any further here, so this would be like the basics. I basically have the bits in that I care about at the moment. What I need to do in my view, so I'm going to need to be able to integrate and add some JavaScript into my view here. Because I need to be able to say, hey, I got this JavaScript that I'm building out, this item view JavaScript, but how do I actually wire that up to my module? And the way we do that in DNN is we use these tokens that I talked to you about earlier. So here's an example of one of the tokens. So this one says, I want to inject some JavaScript. And I'm going to use jQuery. Now, because jQuery is one of these frameworks that that DNN already knows about, I'm just going to go to a second page, to my extensions page. So because DNN already knows about jQuery, I can just give it the name and say, hey, I need jQuery. DNN will figure out you know, that it's a library, right? So it's this jQuery library. If I needed jQuery UI or Knockout, you know, I can just pass those names in as well. So that's sort of what I'm doing here. I'm telling it I need jQuery. I'm going to need Knockout. I'm going to need something from DNN jQuery. And then I'm also going to need this new item that I just created, right? So in this case, this isn't the DNN spa module. This is a demo. Again, so these first two, DNN knows about. It knows about jQuery. It knows about Knockout. The second one, it's not really a public library. This is a DNN specific one, so I just need to tell it where it's at. And then this last one is my items view. So I did all of this with tokens, and it's very easy. If you've done any like short codes and WordPress or some of these others, tokens are very similar. If you've done DNN development for any length of time, certainly you know tokens. So we've created a few new ones. We've also got a token that's called CSS. I think it's CSS. I'll have to go look at that. This is very similar, and then you'll pass in some parameters around CSS. But I'll verify that those tokens. Charles has a really good blog post that identifies those. I don't really need that for this module. We're not really using CSS. The other thing that I want to do is remember we said we wanted to bring our module action menu back. So I've actually got one here that I've already created, and it's basically saying I'm going to create an edit control. If you're in edit mode, we're going to call it edit module, and then there may be a resource file up here, view resx, that may be used. So all of that tells me what I need for my module action. So let me go look at resource files, because there is one change now to resource files. So before, our resource files were called view.ascx.resx. Now our resource file, we can get rid of that ASCX part. We can just call it view.resx. The system will figure out that it's the HTML, and we're good to go, right? So now I'll be able to use those resources within my HTML. So now I've got a module action defined there. And so it knows that there's going to be this edit control. And so now everything I should be able to come back to my page, should be able to run this again, and we should see our module action menu pop up here. And notice that I did not create an edit.html. Still, the edit control is defined as an ASCX. So as soon as this finishes reloading here for me, hello, Earth to IIS, come in, IIS. So as soon as this finishes loading, we should see my module action pop up here, and come back into my edit mode, stay in edit mode. Okay, now I have my module action back. It's not finding the name in my resource file. I probably need to go edit that, but that's fine. And if I click on that, I'm going to get back to my edit page, right? This is an ASCX. I have not created an HTML version of this yet.
So is that token new? That's pretty cool. I didn't know you could do it.
Yeah, so this was launched when we first launched the MV or the SPA module. So
okay, cool.
And there's actually another change we're going to do to this that will allow you to actually, instead of calling out to the framework and saying pop up my edit view, we've got one more. It's supported by module actions. It's just not supported today by this token. It'll allow you to, instead of calling back to the server to get that view, it will instead call a JavaScript function within your view model, right? So I'll be able to say, hey, call this function instead, and then maybe my view on my page just swaps out using a a spa-like experience rather than this whole pop-up, right? This whole pop-up can be a little bit jarring in a spa world. So maybe you want to do it through JavaScript and just do a fade to your other screen, or a rollover effect or something like that. So
I saw why your localization isn't coming up. It's because the desktop module name is different in your.
Yeah, you're right. So this should be in spa demo, right? Good catch, Will. So yeah, that other name is the name that I'm using for my template template work. So that should come up now. Let's go ahead and pull this back up. So at this point, we've got most of the pieces, right? So there it is. So we've got most of the pieces. We can understand, okay, how's HTML getting rendered? How's CSS, JavaScript getting injected? How do we do module actions? One of the other items that we can do and that we want to be able to do is we want to be able to inject maybe some information here about some other DNN framework pieces. So I'm going to just grab a snippet here. So one of those is we want to be able to maybe grab module context. So getting things like module ID or portal ID, things like that. There's a whole list of items we support today in the module context, and we continue to look at what we can add to that. And I think Charles spells that out in his original test, in his original blog post. Peter Donker's added some to that. I've added a couple other module context pieces. We'll get that updated in the wiki and in the DNN8 section of the wiki, so you can see exactly what those are. But effectively, this is how we start making some of that server-side data available in the view. The other thing to notice here is I've got another token for resource information. So this is a resx token, right? So now it's going to go look in that same resource file that we had, the view resx file, and it's going to look up this edit item, and it will replace that. Now I haven't done anything to bind the knockout, so all of these data bind things are going to be meaningless. But let's just go see what actually gets rendered here. Really, the only thing you should see is you should see these two buttons with these two resx items. Everything else is going to be basically just some dummy, some placeholder stuff for now. Right, so I get my edit button and my delete button, and both of those are gonna be wired up eventually to my view model to actually do some action.
Yeah. So far, like you've installed a module template, you changed a couple of values, you've copy and pasted a couple of things. Like it's just basically been tokens and HTML. This is pretty impressive.
Right, and so so the next piece that I would start working on is I would start building out my services side. So rather than go into this, I'm going to actually shift over to another. I've got my actual sample module here is for the item template is in Visual Studio Code. Because I'm doing just HTML and JavaScript for most of this, and I don't need to compile anything. I've already got a functioning site. So you can see all I'm doing, I've got a little bit of script. I'm wiring up my knockout bindings again, getting that module ID. So I'm again looking for that module context, module ID, setting it as a JavaScript value. Remember, when I created that item list view model, I was passing in a module ID and some localized settings. Now in my localized settings, I might do something like say, edit label equals, and then do some resx value. So this is one of the items that we know we want to change. And we'll just leave it like that for now. So we know that we need a more robust, I'm sorry, excuse my JSON malformity there. And that would be a comma if I needed a comma. Oh, this is wrong here, sorry. There you go. Oh, no, I had it right. Anyway, so I would come in here and do my resx. Yeah, that's what I want. So come in here, do my resx, like we've done above, right? Key and the name of the key, and I would keep doing that and build out my resources here. So that's what those localized settings is. I don't need that for this one. I put most of my resources directly in line where I needed them. And so when I build out my services, I'll show you this really briefly, and then we'll go take a look at what this looks like in action. My services, right, I still have my regular service route mapper. So I defined where my module's at. I defined a default route. I defined a controller. Now I actually use more of a REST style API. If you look in the framework, a lot of the examples use an RPC style API, and an RPC style would be like a controller and an action, where your action is like the name of some module or some method, like save data or update item or delete user, right? Those would be actions. I actually am using a REST style, so I would say DNN SPA module API / item. And if I pass in an item ID, I know I'm talking about a specific item. If I don't pass in an item ID, I know I'm talking about a whole list. So, and then I use verbs like the HTTP verbs, whether it's a get or a delete or a post, to tell the system what method to call based on whether I'm trying to delete data or get data, and whether I'm trying to get a singular data or a list of data. So if you understand REST, you'll understand all of that. If you don't worry about it. Go on about your business with the way you're used to doing RPC style server-side services, right? So anyway, so this one uses an RPC style, and I'm going to call into a controller. Again, all of this, if you've done any web service stuff in DNN 6 or 7, this is all the same. I'm just, again, doing things like using the RPC style, or not RPC, the REST style, and relying on the web API to figure out what method to call based on whether I have an ID or whether I don't have an ID, right? And it'll figure this is a get, and it'll be able to differentiate between the two. And then again, I'm just calling down, going into my repository, getting an item out, and passing it back. So there's no real magic going on here in my service, right? So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going into what the service does. So
yeah, so the services, there are plenty of resources on there, out there, and we'll include those in the show notes, and they're pretty straightforward. But a question I have for you, Joe, and this is kind of a tangent, but it's related to what you're just showing. You know, that sounds great to be able to use the REST style, but you'll have instances where you might, instead of just get or get list, you might need to do get list by, right? Like maybe get list by active only. Does your style still support that?
Yeah, you can do that. There are some other tricks that you have to do if you want to go really deep into a REST style. And so there are other things that you can do to decorate those to tell it, hey, this is used. And so what I would traditionally do if I wanted to do something different and use mix RPC in the REST style, there are some other ways to extend that to be able to get those other items. That could be a whole other discussion by itself.
Agreed.
But definitely doable. There's a guy that I follow up in Canada who's got a really great web API series that he does. Can't remember. Strathweb is his website. And he's got a whole ton of stuff on Web API, and so if you want to know more about Web API and the REST versus RPC style, he's got some great resources up there, and we'll put that in the show notes as well.
Yep.
What I wanted to do was just one last item before we wrap it up here, is show the working example and sort of where we get to when you build out all of those services, when you finish doing the model there.
And just so everybody knows, like the difference between where you are now and where we started was wiring up the web services. Is that right? And adding
let me change. Yeah, so I didn't wire up the rest of the web services. That is, where did it go? There we are. So yeah, I changed the bindings earlier, and now it's coming back to bite me. So we'll change that back.
The DNN-dev.me.
Yeah. Although it really shouldn't have required it, but it probably did something funky here. So we'll just turn those bindings off on one and turn them back on the other. Edit. We'll call that 8,000. Where's my right there? So this is one of the challenges with Chris Hammond's method, is that you only have one DNN dev me, right? So I would do this a little bit differently, but for now this works fine.
Yeah, and for somebody getting started with module development, this is probably the best way to get started. But yeah, there are other methods to development.
Yeah, and hopefully I didn't do something funky in my system and mess things up, but we'll see.
As long as you didn't just refresh, you'll be fine, because you're going to end up at the same place. I do that.
Yeah, no, yeah.
So
as soon as this rebuilds, hello. I think it did take just a refresh. Let's see if I can go navigate. No, there's something else that probably hit the database and screwed something up for me. Yeah, because it's still looking for some funky thing in the path. So anyway, we're not going to worry about it. So what you would ultimately get is you'd get basically Chris Hammond's original demo, only fully written in JavaScript and HTML with a web service backend. Right. And the key part that we didn't go into, the key part that we didn't talk about, and again, this is nothing new. This is just going into the scripts. If you look at the scripts, so just like getting a list, it's a simple AJAX call, right? It's like, go here, call AJAX, call a base URL, call into the service framework, set my module headers before I send anything. Tell it that it's a JSON that I expect, and then I'm going to get some data back and turn on or off loading, right? And there are a few things that I set up early on here, right? So I'll set up a service, tell it what the path name is to the service, and then the framework, again, I use the module ID. So this sets up the service framework. So if you've ever done any DNN web service framework stuff, all of this should look pretty darn familiar. None of this is new. This is not specific to the SPA framework. It's just standard DNN JavaScript AJAX development. So with that, that pretty much covers everything there is to doing a SPA module. Now there may be a few other parts that you may want to cover, and we can certainly go over those in future Hangouts, or we can even we'll have some FAQs up. We are working on some additional documentation, so all of those things should help you get going with SPA module development.
Awesome, sounds good. Yeah, and I have a nice list of Hangout notes that people will So, by the time you see this video, hopefully that will be all posted into a consolidated area for everybody. But yeah, this is good demo. Kind of wish we'd have saw it working. I think everybody's going to be like, at this point, they're going to be like, "Oh," and you're muted.
Yeah. So they'll just have to download and install the template here next week, and it should be they'll be able to see exactly what the demo is. No magic there. It's really just. Then it's just a bunch of build out the services and build out the view models. But all the magic was in using those tags and in knowing that we're just going to change from ASCX to HTML and then do the one trick with the resource file, and that's it. Those are the real magic bits for SPA module development.
Yeah, that's a good summary to put out there, Joe. That's really important because when you look at it, module development, for those of us been doing it, it's pretty easy. Right? We've been doing it for a long time, but if you haven't been doing it or you haven't been doing SPA yet or anything like that, this kind of comes at you like a snowball coming down the hill, right? Like,
right.
Oh no, there's all this stuff.
Right. Yeah. So take it one step at a time, and that's why I actually like starting from Chris Hammond's module template, right? Because you can see right away that you don't have to jump in and do the whole thing as SPA right from the get-go, right? I could start with Chris Hammond's template and just focus on working to get the view piece working, right? The edit piece I can still leave as an ASCX. The settings page I can leave as an ASCX. There's one other piece that we'll probably do a whole separate hangout on, and that's a new concept called quick settings. I know some people don't like them, but when you're doing SPA module development, they come in real handy, so that you don't have to use any ASCXs at all. You cannot replace the normal settings section in a DNN module with just some HTML, because there's too much that happens on the server side. So we can't make that work. So we have quick settings for SPA modules, and for those people who want more of a SPA type experience, quick settings is good for that. So
cool. Well, good stuff, Joe. I think everybody will find this nice.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll get this out there soon, and this will help people get started. Next week we'll talk about MVC module development. And one thing I hope you take away from this, because the way we build MVC modules is going to be very similar to the way we build SPA modules, right? And you can actually mix and match. I can have a module that is part SPA, part MVC, and part ASCX, and I can mix all three of those in the same module, and DNN doesn't care. It just renders. If you say render HTML here, it does that. If you say render MVC view here, it'll do that. I could have settings page be MVC. I can have my edit page be ASCX, and I can have my view page be HTML and JavaScript.
So if we keep the DNN 8 module contents in mind, one of the categories is on innovation. If I created a module called Honeybadger, Honeybadger don't care, and it uses all three of those techniques, would that be considered as creativity with the framework?
It might be considered that, but you haven't really done anything that the framework didn't do for you. So we're really looking for you to actually push the limits of the framework, right? Tell us where the boundaries are. Tell us where some pain points are that we could clean up for you. And also, one of the other requirements was you have to be predominantly an MVC or predominantly a SPA module, so we know what category to put you in.
I'm going to be both.
Can't be both. You can only be one or the other.
Oh, you're labeling us, Joe.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. For $5,000, I think most people will be okay with that.
Yeah, I think we will. I think I agree with that.
Okay, well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone who's viewing this, and we'll see you next week.
Yep, and if you have any follow-up questions, just let us know on our respective Twitters or in the comments of the respective blogs that go out, or you can always ask questions in our forums and whatnot. There's people like us taking a look and monitoring that, and we'll get back to you on it. So thanks for watching.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Bye.